the last part of the parameterization of physical processes in the models. Okay, we have almost covered all the schemes, like starting from radiation, then land surface processes. PVL we skipped because we had discussed it earlier. Cumulus parameterization, and today cloud microphysics parameterization. Probably we had discussed little bit about the cloud processes in your first semester, right? And you may be having the PowerPoint also, I suppose, for that. Do you have a PowerPoint of the first semester?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So check your PowerPoint of the first semester. In that, we had discussed basic cloud microphysics, that how the clouds form, and what are the types, like of the rainfall processes, like warm rain or warm cloud, cold cloud, etc. Those things we had discussed in the first semester itself. Uh, in today's class, I'll try to finish in one class the parameterization of large scale cloud microphysics in large scale and mesoscale models. Okay, so in this today, I'll touch upon why to parameterize clouds. We have already talked about that earlier also. Then there are two types of cloud parameterization schemes used in the model. One is the diagnostic cloud scheme, and other is the prognostic cloud microphysics scheme. Okay, and then in that also there are two types. One is used for the large scale model parameterization, and the other one is for the mesoscale model parameterization. Okay, and if time permits, we shall see some results of the Indian region. Okay, so the basic assumption for any parameterization scheme. Now we have discussed it for the cumulus parameterization also about this. Like the fundamental assumption in any parameterization scheme is that physical process, whether it is cloud microphysics or whether it is convection, that is related to the large scale variables. Okay, the processes for that particular subgrid scale physics is related to the large scale variables. That is one of the fundamental assumptions in that. Okay, so here the basic assumption again is that it is assumed that the cloud processes can be expressed in terms of the large scale variables. Okay, and there are two approaches. One is the diagnostic approach, and other is a prognostic approach. Okay, in cloud microphysics parameterization or cloud parameterization scheme, uh, first of all, there are two things that we are going to parameterize. Okay, or two things that we are going to calculate. Right? One is about the cloud amount, right? How much cloudiness is there in the sky, our grid box? Okay, that is, the cloud amount is measured in terms of, what is the unit of cloud amount?
Octa.
Octa.
Octa, sir.
Correct. Yeah. So here for the model, we use it as percentage of the grid box covered by the cloud, or a fraction of the grid box covered by the cloud. Right. So we need to calculate the cloud amount or the fraction of the grid box covered by the cloud. Okay. And that is required especially for the radiation purpose. Right. We have talked about that earlier also. Three different ways of cloud radiation interaction. We treat the clouds in three different ways, like cloudiness, especially the random overlap, right? The maximum overlap and the mixed random maximum overlap. Do you remember that? The
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, right.
Yes, sir.
We talked about that in the radiation parameterization scheme, right? So that is about the way we treat the cloudiness, but how much is the cloudiness in a grid box that we have to calculate, right? And for that, there are two approaches, prognostic and diagnostics. Okay, obviously diagnostic is the simple one, and prognostic is more complicated because we have to use the equations, especially the differential equations again for that. But the important parameters that are used in diagnosing the cloudiness are relative humidity Without the moisture, obviously, clouds cannot form. So relative humidity is one of the key parameter. Convective activity, right? Another key parameter, because convection leads to the formation of the clouds, especially the convective clouds, right? Then vertical velocity also, right? Because if there is a upward motion, then only there will be a cloud, and that upward motion can be either because of the instability in the atmosphere or because of the large scale ascent, convergence, etc. Due to convergence. Okay, so vertical velocity, atmospheric stability, wind shear, right? Surface fluxes. So all these parameters are used to diagnose the cloud amount. Okay, especially in the diagnostic scheme. Okay, so let's discuss the most popular or the basic diagnostic cloud scheme, which was proposed by Slingo. Okay, Julia Slingo, LED, from University of Reading, UK. Okay, 1987. So she proposed this cloud scheme, which was very popular, and it has been used, even today also in many models. This way of cloud, diagnosing the cloud in the grid boxes. Okay, all very simple, but uh, more complex scheme like the prognostic scheme of the TDK also is used. If you have a computing power, and also that is also used in some models. Okay, so we shall discuss first the diagnostic cloud scheme of Slingo 1987. Now, in this scheme, we consider 4 types of cloud. Let me use the laser. In this scheme, we use 4 types of cloud. One is the convective cloud, which includes cumulus and cumulonimbus. Okay. The other is the high cloud, which includes the cirrus. Third is the middle cloud, which includes altostratus and altrocumulus. Okay. And the fourth is the low cloud, which is the stratus and the stratocumulus. Okay. So these 4 types of cloud are schematically represented in this diagram. Okay. This is the vertical levels, and this indicates the deep convective clouds that includes cumulus and cumulonimbus. Okay. Now, from the top of the cloud, as you know, there is an anvil, and anvil is basically the cirrus, right? Which is more like a stratiform cloud. So cirrus is a high cloud. Okay. Then middle cloud, altostratus and altocumulus. Okay. And the low cloud, stratus and stratocumulus. So there are the 4 types of clouds which are considered in the Slingo's scheme of 1987. Okay. Now, how do we do that? Basically, again, as I said, we try to compute the amount of cloudiness, okay, in a grid box. So one by one, we'll discuss. For the convective cloud, the amount of convective clouds in a grid box is determined by this empirical relation, okay, where M and N are empirical constants, and P is the convective precipitation, right? Log of convective precipitation. Now, this convective precipitation, as we had discussed, we try to calculate from the cumulus parameterization scheme. Remember, in the cumulus parameterization, the 3 most important things that we compute is 1, convective precipitation, the second one, cumulus warming, and the third one, cumulus drying or moistening, right? So this convective precipitation is actually obtained from the convective parameterization scheme of the model. So obviously, now before you call this parameterization, or before you calculate this parameterization, you have to compute the convection, or you have to compute the cumulus parameterization first. Okay. So this is the convective cloud amount in a grid box. Then the next is high cloud. Now high clouds, again, it is categorized into 2. Okay, 2 classes. Now one type of high clouds are those which are forming at the top of the cumulonimbus from the anvil. Just now we discussed that from the anvil of the cumulonimbus, you go to the cirrus cloud. Okay, so those type of high clouds are calculated using this relationship, and you see that for those clouds, because that is dependent upon the cumulonimbus or convective clouds, so the CC, which is here, convective cloud amount, is also part of this calculation. Okay, that means those type of high clouds which are emanating from the envelope of the cumulonimbus are calculated from this formula, using this formula, and which is actually dependent on the convective cloud amount also. Okay, they are all based on the empirical relationships, based on several studies over the globe, okay, or the earth. Then the second type of high clouds can form even without the convection, in which there is a slow, large-scale ascent, suppose, for a long period of time. Then the moisture can rise up, right, because of the large-scale vertical motion. Moisture can go up, and if it reaches very high level, then the high clouds can form, right? So that typically depends upon the relative humidity. Okay, so the cloud amount or the high cloud amount, because of the large scale processes, okay, stratiform processes are calculated from this relationship, whereas the high cloud amount, which is from the convective cloud, or which occurs or forms into the convective clouds, are calculated using this relationship. Now the medium clouds are calculated simply by this relationship, in which the amount of medium cloud in a grid box is determined by the maximum of the relative humidity of the grid point if it exceeds a critical value. If our grid point, if the relative humidity exceeds a critical value, then only we can compute the medium cloud amount, and we use this relationship for that. So if the relative humidity of the grid box in the grid box is less than the critical value, then we set the medium cloud at 0. Okay. Maximum between 0 and this quantity. Right? So if the critical relative humidity, which is defined by this one, RH times 1 minus Cc, where Cc is again the convective cloud amount. Okay, so convective cloud amount is very important, because when the deep convection occurs, no, it extends for a very high level, up to a very high level, right? Which encompasses both low cloud, medium cloud, and high cloud. So Cc is here. So the critical relative humidity at each grid point is calculated by this relationship, relative humidity times 1 minus Cc. Okay, and when this relative humidity for that grid point is more than the critical humidity, or you can say that no, it is more than 80%. The 0.8 is there, that means you are considering 80% as a threshold value. Okay, then you use this, or otherwise, if it is less than that, then you use simply 0. Set the medium cloud at 0. Then for the low clouds, again, there are two categories of low cloud: type 1 and type 2. The low clouds, again, as you know, can form either because of the convection, when there is a unstable atmosphere, right? Convection occurs and the clouds can form, right? So there is a convective low cloud like cumulus, right? Cumulus is a convective low cloud, right? But the low clouds can also form because of the stratiform processes. Simple ascent, fourth about the topography, like you might have seen low clouds hanging over the mountains, right? And the same thing, now when it descends down to the ground, we call it as fog, right? Otherwise, no, it is a stratiform cloud over the mountain, or nimbus. Okay, nimbostratus. Nimbostratus is generally the base of the cumulonimbus, or even stratocumulus. Okay, stratocumulus, partly cumulus, partly stratus, right? Partly convective, partly non-convective, right? So the low clouds, which form because of the large-scale ascent, without unstable in an atmosphere which may not be unstable, we compute the low cloud amount by this expression C prime M equal to maximum between 0 and this same thing similar to the medium cloud amount. Okay, where CL is equal to 0 if there is subsidence. Okay, if there is a subsidence, sinking motion, that is omega is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, then the low cloud amount is set to be 0, because there cannot be cloud if there is subsidence. Okay, if the vertical velocity is greater than 0.1 Pascal per second, then we compute the C prime L. Now, depending on the vertical velocity, we make it dependent on the vertical velocity, and then again compute the low cloud amount by this expression. Okay, and then otherwise we simply compute the low cloud amount as this one. Now, for the second type, which is purely because of the convective processes. We take into account the stability parameter, the stability of the atmosphere. And then again, we, instead of defining C prime L by this expression, we define C prime L by this expression, equal to minus 6.67 delta theta divided by del P, okay, minus this. They are all empirical parameters obtained based upon several observations over the different points over the Earth, a globe. So C prime L we define by this, and then we compute the low cloud. We say the low cloud is 0 if the relative humidity at the base of the cloud is less than 60%. Okay, that means at the lifting condensation level, at the base of the cloud, or the top of the period, we can say, if the relative humidity is less than 60%, then we set the amount of low cloud at 0. If the relative humidity is between 60 to 80%, then we calculate CL equal to C prime L times this one. Okay, that means it is 0.8, that is 80%. And otherwise, CL is equal to simply this one. So this is how we compute the convective type of low cloud, that means cumulus cloud. So we compute the low cloud by two methods, two categories, one for the convective and one for the non-convective, status, nemo, status type. Medium cloud, now we have seen, we basically make it dependent on the relativity, and the high cloud again, two ways or two types. One is because of the anvil from the top of the cumulonimbus, or cirrus emanating from the top of the cumulonimbus, and the cirrus or high clouds which are formed because of the slow large scale ascent for a long period of time. So this is how we compute the cloudiness, cloud amount in the grid box, point by point over the entire domain. Okay, simple. Okay? There is no need to solve any complex differential equation. There is no need for any such numerical differentiation or so. Okay, simple diagnostic approach. But it should be noted that these equations provide only a probability of the cloud occurrence, okay, and do not represent in any way a physical process, because you have seen all parameters which you have seen, they are all basically empirical parameters. So whenever you have empirical parameters, that means you are trying to find out statistical relationship or trying to regress the equation based upon so many observations, right? So if you do that, statistically, any statistical relationship need not be physically sound, okay, because it's purely based on the data, right? So they do not represent in any way a physical process. Okay? Just for the convenience of calculation or study, we try to relate them with the relative humidity or vertical velocity or stability parameters and so on. Okay. Prognostic cloud microphysics schemes are more complex, obviously, and probably will not discuss those things in detail here. Probably so much of detail may not be required for you. Maybe some of you, when you do your PhD and especially in the cloud microphysics, then probably you can study those things. But this also is separately calculated for the large scale model, for the mesoscale model, and for the cloud resolving models. Okay. Three categories of model: large scale models, that is global; mesoscale models, that is regional; and the cloud resolving model, which is very finer, having very finer resolution. Okay. Now, in this first category, large scale model, the most popular schemes are Sundquist 1978, 1989. You can read those details if you want to. TDK, actually, this became very popular. TDK 1993, which actually was based upon the Sundquist 1989 basis of this Sundquist technique. But it became very popular in many large scale models, including ECMWF model for computing the cloud amount. And why it became popular? Because it gave some sound physical basis for computing the cloudiness. And TDK actually was the only one, or the first one, I should say, who also developed a prognostic equation for cloud amount. Okay, generally, no other schemes have prognostic equation for the cloud amount, but it proposed a prognostic equation for the cloud amount. It computed the mass budget of the cloud amount, and so it became a bit more popular because it had a very attractive physical principle in it, and it took into account the convective parameters that we have discussed in the our SWOT scheme, like determinant kitna hai, entrainment kitna hai, right? Convective precipitation kitna hai, and all those things. So liquid water, how much is liquid water amount in that cloud. So DTK considered those things and made it more physically sound and physically fascinating, attractive scheme. So it was used quite in many models. But obviously, if you use such model, then very expensive in terms of the computation. Okay. Later on, Delgenio in 1996, Delgenio was working at NASA GISS. NASA has so many laboratories. NASA GISS is GISS, Goddard Institute for Space Studies, GISS. That is, I think, at New York. Whereas NASA Goddard Space Flight Center is at Maryland. Okay, I was actually at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, Maryland. Delgenio was at New York, GISS, Goddard Institute of Space Studies. So NASA has also a global model, like ECMWF. TDK scientists at ECMWF. So he developed the scheme and tested in the ECMWF model, whereas Delgenio developed the scheme for the NASA model, NASA's global model. Okay, so these are for the large-scale models. I'm not going to discuss in detail these things because it's too much for you. Then for the mesoscale models, again, very important parameterization schemes are there. Okay, and very again physically sound, like Lin et al. 1983, Rutledge and Hobbs 1983, Sulz 1995. I mean, if you read these papers, you will have really a good flavor of how the cloud microphysical processes operate and how to take into account those things in the model now. And they're quite expensive, obviously, computationally. So Lin et al. Became the basis of all the computation of the cloud microphysical parameters, especially when we talk about mini cloud hydrometeor species, like whether it is liquid water or ice water or snow, grapple, etc. Because those things are the cloud microphysical parameters, and those things are also have to be computed in the model. Okay, if you want to have a more accurate cloud radiation interaction, then those things have to be computed. So the basis of all that actually was Lin et al. 1983, Rutledge and Hobbs 1983, etc. Dudia in 1989 also proposed a simple scheme, but basically just 3 parameters: I think liquid water, ice, and rainwater. 3 parameters. So it's more simple scheme, but also used for the mesoscale model, like especially for the MM5, and also I think it is still available in the WRF model, also Dudia's scheme. Weissner 1998 also proposed. These are more complex schemes. Actually, these schemes are used for computing the cloud microphysical parameters rather than the cloud amounts. The one which you discussed earlier was actually used for the computation of cloud amounts, right? Cloudiness. But these are used for computing the cloud hydrometeor contents, right? The mixing ratios of each of those cloud hydrometeors, like water vapor, liquid water, cloud liquid water, or cloud ice, snow, etc., hail, grapple. It depends upon how much complexity you want to, right? If you want to have full cloud microphysics, then you have to consider all those species, right? 5-6 species that we have talked. So those things are there available, and they are all based upon this Lin or Rutledge and Hobbs of 1983. Okay. Morrison also proposed in 2005, a scheme for computing the cloud hydrometeor contents. Okay. Seaford et al. 2005, Hong et al. 2004, 2006. Now this scheme became more popular later on. You might have heard, and it is available in the WRF model also, like WRF single moment, WRF double moment, etc. Okay. So those things are proposed by Hong et al. This will talk in brief those things now in this class today. Then for the cloud resolving model, again another host of schemes were proposed, because in these models, as the name implies, you can resolve explicitly the clouds, right? Unlike in these models, you cannot explicitly resolve the clouds. You have to parameterize, but in the cloud resolving model, as the name implies, you can resolve the individual clouds, and obviously that means its resolution is very, very high, right? Less than 1 kilometer or so, right? Sometimes in terms of hundreds of meters, right? Then only you can resolve individual clouds. But still, because the cloud hydrometeor or cloud macrophysical processes are operating at much smaller scale, at micro scale, so they have to be parameterized, right? Although you can resolve the cloud, but microphysical processes have to be parameterized. And in that category, now we have the schemes of the Sung and Tau 1980, Tau and Simpson 1984, Tau and Sung 86. Tau is there almost everywhere. Yeah, in all the four places, Tau is there. But Tau is a scientist. He's still a scientist at NASA. Same place where I was there, the Goddard Space Flight Center, working in that mesoscale modeling division of the NASA at Goddard, Maryland. And actually, Simpson was their guru. Simpson is a lady, she is very respected lady. She is no more now. And Simpson, I think her full name was Joan Simpson. She was there alive at the time when I was there. Joan Simpson. She is considered the first lady of USA who worked on many things of the convective processes of the tropical meteorology. She even flew in the aircraft observations for collecting observations and modeling, etc., etc. I think the American Meteorological Society, they are bringing a Simpson Memorial Volume, a book on her name, which uh, includes so many papers which she had published throughout her career. So Simpson's Memorial Volume. They also conducted a symposium when she died, I think a few years ago. They conducted a Simpson Memorial Symposium. Okay, so very famous scientist lady, the first lady, as I said. And actually, her husband was also a scientist now, in the same field, meteorology. So Simpson and Simpson, they together published also some papers, known by the name Simpson and Simpson, both husband and wife together. Okay. So even her husband was also working on this tropical meteorology problems. So Simpson, and she actually was a teacher now, PhD guide or postdoc, teacher for this staff. Tau became very famous later on because he was more like a modeler, and all his papers, so many papers, I think hundreds of papers here for Tau, which were published because everybody used their model later on, and so whenever people use their model, they had to refer him, right? And also many of those papers, they had to make him a co-author because that was his model, which people used for further study or modification, etc. So Tau is there everywhere. Okay. So these are used for the cloud resolving scale models. Now this is just a popular diagram that how you visualize the clouds at different scales. Suppose if you are looking from a satellite at the Earth's surface, then this is how it looks like. Clouds are distributed everywhere on the Earth's surface. There are all the cloud patterns. Okay. If you focus further, if you zoom further, suppose you focus over India and how the clouds look like. Okay. From the satellite, that is from the space, it looks like this. Now, if you are zooming over India, then it clouds look like this. Further zooming these clouds, then it will look like this, like a typical local place, like from your place. You look at the sky, then the clouds will look like this. If you further analyze it and look at through the microscope, then inside the that you can see these kind of pattern. And you can also see these kind of patterns in a cloud chamber, artificial cloud chamber in the laboratory. Like IITM Pune has a cloud chamber. Okay, not everywhere. I think in India, IITM has the only place where there is a cloud chamber because there are a strong group earlier on the cloud, working on the cloud physics. I think what was his name? He retired, professor. I forgot his name. But the students are there now, and क्या नाम था उनका भूल गया. Yeah. So now they are also working in the cloud electricity, cloud electrification. Okay, so these kind of patterns you can see in the cloud chamber in a laboratory. Further, if you see, by enlarging or zooming through a microscope, then you can see the individual particles inside those clouds. Like they are the ice particles, ice crystals of different shapes. You might have seen this kind of diagram earlier in your first semester when we discussed about the cloud microphysical processes, right? So these are the ice crystals of different shapes present in the cloud, and people who have to study these minute micro scale processes, they have to study these things. Okay, but these things obviously we cannot afford to calculate in the large scale models. Otherwise, it will take the whole day for computing these things only, and we will not be able to get our forecast, right? So we have to have a simple model so that we can compute these things, hydrometeor contents, in a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, whole time will go. Only for research purpose, of course, you have unlimited time. You can get your result in 2 days or 3 days. Nobody will question you. So for research purpose, you can use this detailed cloud microphysical processes or equations. But for the practical operational purpose, forecasting purpose, we can't afford to use these things. Even with the supercomputer like the one which we have in India, IITM petaflop computer, 7 petaflops altogether we have, right? Including SMRWF, about 3 petaflops, and IITM I think about 5 or 6 petaflops, right? So even with that computing power also, we cannot use such a detailed cloud microphysics because otherwise our forecast will be delayed. Right? So microphysics, okay. As you know, the microphysics is the microscale processes controlling formation of cloud droplets and ice crystals, their growth and fallout as precipitation. Right? These are the cloud microphysical processes. And as I mentioned, people, those who study these processes, mostly they are actually the observation people. They collect samples from the clouds by using their crafts. They fly in their crafts, collect samples, and bring the sample back to the laboratory, and then try to study them in the laboratory. Okay, Andrew Hempsfield is a famous person who did a lot of work in ice clouds or the cold clouds, the frozen clouds. Andrew Hempsfield, he was working, I think he may be still there. Andrew Hempsfield, I think he was also at NASA. Yeah, Andrew Hempsfield also at NASA. Yeah, so mostly on the observational aspect, I think he was also there when I was there at that place. And he was talking to me one day saying that he would like to also work on the models, how models can take into account these uh, processes or the microprocesses in the models. So basically, these people, I mean, there are many people, there are many scientists who work only on the observational aspects for these detailed cloud microphysics. So the basic assumptions again in the cloud microphysical processes computations are that the various types of hydrometeors are simplified to a few categories, right? Like cloud droplets, raindrops, cloud ice, snow, graupel, etc. I mean, there can be many varieties. I mean, in the reality, in the real cloud, there can be many varieties of hydrometeor species, but we cannot account for all those things, otherwise we become cumbersome, horrendous problem in computation. So we've simplified to a very few categories, maybe 5 or 6 categories, like cloud droplets, raindrops, cloud ice, snow, and graupel. And for our purpose, for the NWP purpose, as well as for the cloud, the climate model purpose also, this much is sufficient generally. Even in the climate models, no models can afford, because climate models have to be integrated for even longer period, for years and years. So they cannot obviously afford to go so much in detail of the cloud microphysics. Right? So they also use very simple things. Only for those people who are especially interested only in the cloud microphysical research, they can, of course, they can take as many days as they want to for computational purpose, and then their study, as I said, are usually based on the observations. Secondly, we assume thermodynamic equilibrium between cloud droplets and the water vapor. Okay. Therefore, the condensation and evaporation of cloud droplets can be treated diagnostically, that is by the so-called saturation adjustment. Right? You have heard about the processes of the rain formation or cloud droplet formation. We have studied that in our first semester, like the warm cloud processes, like Bergeron-Feinstein theory. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Good, good, very good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, correct. So Bergeron process, what is the fine-tuning process. So they always assume some kind of a equilibrium between the cloud droplets and the water vapor on its surface, right? The so-called saturation adjustment. There is some technical comment here. The saturation adjustment is called at several points in the code, that is at different points, that is within dynamics and at the end of the microphysics scheme. Well, this is for the computational purpose. Okay, it has to be checked because whether your grid point or grid box is oversaturated, supersaturated or not. Again, if it becomes too much supersaturated, then it will create unnecessary artificial moisture in the grid box. So in order to avoid that, you have to check frequently before calling the microphysics and after calling the before calling the dynamics and after calling the dynamics. Okay. So the high resolution models having delta X, the grid resolution of a few kilometers or less, like the MM5 or the GCRM, the Global Cloud Resolving Model. I mean, when you use the cloud resolving model at the global scale, then you can imagine again in our computational requirement, power requirement will be much high, right? But there are people have used this GCRM, Global Cloud Resolving Model, of course, in a slightly simple way. Rather than using the three-dimensional cloud resolving model, they use two-dimensional cloud resolving model. I mean, that is also your option choice is that you can consider a two-dimensional cloud rather than a three-dimensional cloud, like two-dimensional cloud vertical and one direction in horizontal, right? So people have used two-dimensional cloud model at each grid point over the whole globe in the global model and call it GCRM, right? GCRM resolve deep convective scale and mesoscale motions. But microphysics and smaller scale dynamics, that is turbulence, shallow convection, must still be parameterized because those things you cannot afford to have such finer scale. Turbulence, they occur at a very fine scale, like the cloud microphysics in micro scales. So they have to be parameterized in any case. So the key parameters, most of the key parameters that are required or used in the cloud microphysical processes, computations are, for example, the latent heating and cooling, which occurs because of the condensation, evaporation, deposition, sublimation, freezing, melting. You should know all this terminology, okay? You have to read yourself. What is deposition? What is sublimation? What is freezing? What is melting? Okay, what is sedimentation, etc., etc. Those things you have to study yourself from the book, maybe from the glossary of the American Meteorological Society, AMS glossary is there, and you find very good definitions with illustrations of all these things. Okay, so you have to read these things because there can be small questions sometimes. Short notes, write short notes on deposition, write short notes on sedimentation process. Okay, or what is the difference between deposition and sublimation? These kind of questions can occur. So you have to study yourself from the books. Then condensate loading, that is mass of condensate carried by the flow, precipitation obviously, fallout of the large particles, coupling with surface processes like moist downdrafts leading to the surface wind gustiness, cloud shedding, etc. Cloud shedding, interesting. So not every model does that. Cloud shedding, the shadow effect of the clouds. When the clouds are there in the sky, some part of the ground will be covered by the shadow, right? And there again, the radiation will change, right? When there is a cloudy sky or when there is a partly cloudy sky, you know that now the sunlight is not there everywhere. Only part of the ground is covered by sunlight. So in those areas, when it is partly covered by this cloud or partly part of the sunlight is able to come down, the radiation processes will change. So again, more complex thing. Taking into account the cloud shading, radiative transfer again, mostly mass for absorption, emission of liquid water. Particle size also important for short wave radiation. So for long wave and short wave radiation calculation, of the radiative transfer processes, we need these things. Cloud aerosol precipitation interaction, like aerosol effects of the cloud interact, aerosol effects, okay, but clouds process aerosols as well, okay. So cloud aerosol interaction, cloud aerosol precipitation interaction, those things are also taken into account in the model, okay. Now these are some of the cloud microphysical processes illustrated here in the diagram. Like in the simplest form, you have just three categories: water vapor, cloud droplet, and rainwater, raindrops. Okay? And as it is indicated by the arrows here, from the water vapor, cloud droplets can form. Again, from the cloud droplets, by evaporation, water vapor can form. Okay, and then once the water droplet has formed, then from the water droplet through the auto conversion process, raindrops can form. Remember when we were discussing about the Arkawa-Stewart scheme, there was a parameter called C naught, C0, the auto conversion factor, or the rain conversion parameter. I was telling you on that day, rain conversion parameter. That is the auto conversion factor actually. So from the cloud droplets, it can convert into raindrops by the auto conversion process, or it can also convert into raindrops through accretion process. You must have studied accretion process, right, in your first semester. You remember accretion process?
Yes, sir.
Yes, collision process, accretion process, coalescence process, how the growth of the cloud droplets takes place. Right? And also, when the raindrops evaporate, raindrops can evaporate, and when it is falling through a dry layer of the atmosphere, then again it will contribute back to the water vapor. Right? So these are the interrelated cloud macrophysical processes in the simplest form, or you can say in a warm cloud, because we are not considering here any frozen particles, no ice, no snow. It is in the warm cloud, only water vapor, cloud droplet, and rainwater, raindrops. Okay, rainwater. So these are the definition, okay, that you have to study yourself. Evaporation, what is evaporation, condensation, that you know. Okay, what is auto conversion? It is an artificial process introduced by the separation of cloud droplets and rain. Parameterization of the process is quite difficult. I mean, you cannot compute it now physically, so it has to be parameterized. And many different schemes are available for that. Evaporation of raindrop, those can occur. So even for the warm rain processes, a lot of things are unknown or in discussion for decades, like effects of the mixing, entrainment on the cloud droplet distribution, effects of the turbulence on the coalescence efficiencies, collisional breakup, or the details of the nucleation process. Right? In cloud models, these problems are usually neglected because it becomes too much now to handle for our real-time computational purpose for NWP. Okay, so they are ignored. If you are using more complex cloud model physics, then you have more parameters like water vapor is there, cloud droplets, ice, raindrops, snow, grapple, hail, all those things are there. And how they are interrelated, okay, how they form from, or how they convert from one form to another form, are all illustrated in this schematic diagram through this arrow, okay, like condensation, water vapor through condensation, it can become cloud droplets, okay, through deposition, it can form the cloud ice directly from the cloud water vapor to the cloud ice can form through deposition, and in reverse process through sublimation, ice can become water vapor, and so on, right? So sublimation, deposition, rhyming, okay, aggregation, okay, then there are many other, freezing, melting, okay, all those things are there. So that you have to study yourself. Okay, aggregation process assumes certain collision and sticking efficiency which are not well known. Okay, Hell processes, ice multiplication. Hell process again is another dynamics involved in that. Okay, so it has to be circulated many times that the cumulonimbus, then only hells can form. Okay. So these are the things, some of which are taken into account in some of the recent cloud macrophysical parameters schemes in the model, especially in the WRF model, for example. We have got now new schemes like I think Milbrand scheme is there, and some 2-3 schemes are there. Even Taos scheme also, which I was telling you, the scientist at NASA, Ron Simpson's student. Okay. Yeah, now he himself is old at all. Now, Tao. So those schemes do consider these cloud macrophysical processes, okay, and that we can use in the models. So these are different authors, different scientists who propose different types of schemes. So again, there are so many things that you need to consider if you want to really go into details or more realistic way. Like, we said 5 or 6 species of cloud hydrometeors. But when we say species, normally we mean that we are just trying to compute the mixing ratios, right? Mixing ratio of the water vapor, mixing ratios of the water droplets, liquid water, mixing ratio of the ice, mixing ratio of the snow, etc. But snows, sometimes we also need this size of those particles. What is the size of the ice particles? Okay, what is the size of the droplets? Okay, sometimes we also need the concentration, right? Distribution per square centimeter or per cubic centimeter. How many droplets are there? Number, concentration, right? So the different complexities depending upon your power, how much power you have, and what is your objective. You can use different complexities. If you want to use compute all those things like number, concentration per cubic centimeter of the hydrometeors, or if you want to compute the size distribution of the hydrometeors, or if you want to compute only the mixing ratios of the hydrometeors, depends upon your choice and your objective, right? And accordingly, the complexities are there in different schemes. So here they are represented like cloud, rain, ice, snow, gravel, hell, etc. And there are different schemes. Whether now these schemes consider everything or not is divided by these columns. Okay, number, density, mixing ratio, etc. Okay, overview of microphysics parameter. I think we are almost reaching the time 3:30. You have a class, right? 3:30.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we'll try to finish quickly because I want to finish this parameterization today. Okay, so the microphysics schemes can be broadly categorized into two types. Okay, one is a detailed bin type of physics, they call bin type of microphysics, another we call the bulk type of microphysics. Okay, now obviously bin type, we have got the size distribution of each parameters, like we have got the diameter, size distribution discretized into bins, right? I mean, because it becomes impossible to compute each individual droplets or liquid water droplets or ice crystals. So we just categorize into different beams, and how many beams you can consider that depends upon again our power. So in the bulk parameterization, the size distribution is assumed to follow a functional form, right? Rather than going by bin, we just compute the bulk relationship, okay, between the number, concentration, and the diameter of the cloud or the hydrometer droplets sizes. Okay. So representation of particle size distribution. Then how the bulk schemes predict one or more bulk quantities like mass fixing ratio and assume functional form for the particle size distribution, that is gamma distribution. Well, here the number concentration dependent upon the size is parameterized by this equation, and not times d to the power mu to the power minus lambda d, where lambda is the size or radius. Okay, and this is number concentration. This n naught and mu are specified, they are constant. Lambda is the size or radius of the particles. Lambda can be obtained from the predicted mixing ratio. Q is the mixing ratio. So first you predict the mixing ratio, and of course that you predict from the prognostic equation of your conservation of water vapor mixing ratio equation that the large scale models. And then once you have computed the Q, then you compute the lambda based upon this equation. Okay. Mu is given, okay, N naught is given, RW, the density of water, is given. Okay, all these things are given, and you compute the size distribution. Multi-moment versus single moment. When I say single moment, that means you are considering only one parameter, mixing ratio. When you are having multi-moment, then you are having other parameters like size distribution, number concentration also. Okay. Obviously, if you consider more, then your scheme will be more elastic, and you may get more accurate results. Okay. So single moment predicts mixing ratio only for each species. Multi-moment can predict additional quantity for each species, number, concentration, reflectivity, etc., etc. Prediction of additional moments allow greater flexibility in representing size distributions and hence microphysical process rates. Okay. So other key impacts of single versus double moments are like sedimentation, treatment of size, sorting, evaporation of raindrops. Two moments scheme have a more flexible treatment of raindrop, mean size, etc. Okay, you can have different size of the droplets, larger size, smaller size, and so on. Okay, And these are some of the results which shows single moment versus double moment. Obviously, if you are using double moment, upper panel is showing double moment, lower panel is showing the single moment. This is the reflectivity computed from the cloud, which depends upon the cloud microphysical parameters, and this is rainfall eventually. So in the double moment scheme, we have got more finer features of the precipitation simulated by the model, right? Whereas in the single moment scheme, it is more smoothed, right? This is more smooth and is more in detail, finer feature, finer structure. Okay. So ice physics is a key uncertainty in microphysics scheme due to the complications arising from different ice particle size. This diagram you must have seen in your first semester. Right? Different types of ice, small ice, snow, grapple, hail, etc. are typically parameterized by partitioning ice into different species. Okay. Then these are the complex interaction processes between different species, depending on suppose you are using Rutledge scheme, Rutledge and Hobbs. Then all these complex interaction processes between different hydrometeor species are taken into consideration. In general, there has been a trend towards more complexity in microphysics parameterization, that is including more species and more moments. Recent work has attempted to move away from this approach by allowing particle time to vary as a function of the time of the rain and vapor deposition, ice mixing ratios, which are predicted separately. Okay, in this Stoll-Langas scheme, Morrison-Grabowski scheme, cloud ice, snow, and grapple are not separated into different species with fixed characteristics. We have to quickly move. Cloud aerosol parts, precipitation interaction, again depending on the size of the aerosols, the behavior or interaction will be different. Like this is an illustration or example of polluted cloud, and this is an example of the Princeton cloud. Polluted cloud, Princeton cloud. Okay, rainfall from the Princeton cloud. So there are two types of effect. One is the indirect effect, and another is the direct effect. Okay. First indirect effect is simply the reflection of the solar radiation from the clouds. Okay. I think we have already exceeded the time, 3:35. Your next class teacher must be waiting for you, right? I'll give you this PowerPoint anyway. Hello, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll try to summarize because your other teacher must be waiting. So I'll give you this PowerPoint. Okay, you can read through. Just simple descriptions. And TDK, I've talked about that we will not discuss in detail here because this again a complex scheme of the probabilistic cloud mass prediction. And these are the probabilistic cloud schemes used in mesoscale models, Mean, Rutledge, etc., Hong et al. Okay. Morrison, again another cloud microphysics scheme, which is two moment, 5 species, that is droplet, rain, small ice, snow, grapple, etc. It has also the coupling with aerosols, cloud condensation nuclei, ice nuclei. Okay, it is implemented in South Asian model, WRF, etc., etc. Okay, and these are the interactive processes in that Rutledge scheme. WRF single moment microphysics scheme, Hong, and I think I mentioned it earlier. 2004 and 2006. 2004 is a single moment scheme, and 2006 is a double moment scheme. Okay, also very popular in the WRF model as well as the large scale models. Okay. So that's it. That's it. We have completed the cloud microphysics parameterization scheme also today. Okay, and I see that I hope everybody is there. I think all are there. So
Yes,
today
sir.
we completed all the physical processes, and in the next class from tomorrow we shall start a new topic. I'll see in the syllabus. I think next topic may be the data assimilation. That is a very important topic, very complex. Okay, so we shall start data assimilation probably tomorrow. Okay, so let me stop the presentation. Stop presentation, and also I will stop the recording. Stop recording. And today Adira has got